Have you ever wondered how horror in general impacts us and how we can relate to it in real life situations? Well, today my presentation is on how horror movies impact real life situations. Now, like the question I just asked, how does horror impact us in the real world? Well, going by a few examples, we can say it basically activates our flight or flight mode because I guarantee you've heard a random noise in the dark and you probably thought, should I investigate or should I run away? And I guarantee you most people would run away. Or as simple as, how does this relate to me? Because there is definitely, because of how the horror genre itself is very expansive. There's definitely psychological, thriller, cosmic, definitely a whole bunch of stuff that relates to us and how we can relate to it. Now, today I chose three movies. The first one I chose was Nightmare on Elm Street. This was actually my very first. I might be lying. It might be Friday the 13th, but I will say this is my first horror movie I watched as a kid, and it scared the hell out of me. Now, Nightmare on Elm Street is actually based off, and loosely, as they say, based off of a Cambodian article where a boy was having this phenomenon called nightmare death syndrome. And basically, it was a disorder where people would go to sleep and have a fear of sleeping, and they would basically die in their nightmares, as people would say. Now, Nightmare on Elm Street has a very, very impactful way. How can I say this? It has impacted a lot of people because of its relatable sense of hallucinations, uh, excuse me, sleep paralysis, which is caused by narcolepsy, lucid dreaming, and also PTSD. And the movie actually touches on that a lot. The next movie I chose was Scream. And I'm not gonna lie, I heard that the new one was not so great, but we won't talk about how the new one is. Now, this was actually inspired by a Gaines, Florida killer named Danny Rowling. He was also known as the Gainesville Ripper. Now, how this movie impacted society, even as of today, was really what I called was that it desensitized us to a lot of high end killings and that rush of killing people in its pop culture sense. Now, another one I chose was PTSD from unknown phone calls, breaking and entering, victim grief, and also anxiety. Now, another one I chose as well was how a lot of these slasher movies actually have created and inspired copycats of people who thought it would be a great decision to also do the things that happen in this movie. And another big one that I chose was also the fact that this movie showed us how much the media exploits victims and also real tragedies, because we actually see this a lot in social media and media outlets, and how most times, especially how the internet has been and how people have said things, it really goes to show how a lot of us have been desensitized to this, and how we don't see it as a tragedy no more. We see it as an everyday thing. Another one I chose, and this is my very last one, is actually Juice. Now, some people don't see it as a horror, but more of a hood film. But this is actually be classed as a hood horror noir. Now, the reason why I chose this one is because this actually is a real life impact in society and the system that we know today. And to give you a loose summary of this, it's basically how a group of friends, um, childhood friends, basically, um, they get into a petty robbery, but one doesn't want to do that. He wants to be an inspired DJ, and basically the ringleader, he takes it as a no, and he basically goes on a killing spree and killing his friends. And now, how this is actually a horror movie and how we relate to it so much is because it actually, and especially in the black community, it actually is a big indicator of how much black men's minds get exploited and destroyed by violence, how it is very self-destructive to our community, systematic oppression and fear, and also the pursuit of power. Now, even though I talked about the bad things about horror, I also will talk about sorry, how horror actually has a benefit. Now, horror itself, and studies have shown that it helps with making fear and anxiety more of a choice instead of an emotional misery and unavoidable, helps release tension, um, relevance and effects with the real world, and also shows us that this is all fake.